surrender in the war on terror. That's what Obama did yesterday. I hope Al-Qaeda read that the war on terror is over. And I hope they read all about it in Afghanistan and Pakistan, because they would be surprised to know that the war on terror is over. See, they hit us at Benghazi, they hit us in Boston, and they think it's doing just fine. They're prepared to fight us for another 200 years. And Obama unilaterally declared surrender. When you end a war without winning, it's called losing. And that's exactly what's going on here. When Obama announces he's going to limit drone strikes, he's going to set up a FISA-like board to have to approve the drone strikes. He's going to not put boots on the ground. And if he manages, despite his best efforts, to capture anybody, he's got no place to put them, because he's closing Guantanamo. He's sending the terrorists back to Yemen, where they can go right out on the street with 100% recidivism and attack us again. And even if he manages to keep some people in Guantanamo, he's going to move them to a prison somewhere in the United States, and people are lining up around the block to volunteer their backyards for that location. This is absolutely insane. It really is, in effect, unilateral disarmament. I remember about a week after 9/11, 2001, the New York Times ran a story, "When will we be back to normal?" And they literally were pushing that line in the week or two after 9/11. And ever since the attacks, their whole thrust has been get back to normal, get over it. Things happen, stuff happens, and don't get hung up on this. Don't change anything because of this. And Bush didn't listen to them. He retrofitted the United States so that we would be less vulnerable to foreign attacks. He sent troops to Afghanistan and arguably Iraq, so they would be back on their heels and couldn't launch a terror strike, and basically defensed the United States. And Obama continued a lot of his policies for a while, but his patience with war is running thin. Unfortunately, we don't get to say when this war ends. They do. We don't get to say when the attacks stop. Al-Qaeda does. And when Obama says there have not been any large-scale attacks since 9/11, what does he say to the people that were blown up in the Boston Marathon and to our dead ambassador in Benghazi? Those were pretty large-scale attacks. How big does it have to be, Mr. President, before it gets your attention? So this is really a white flag that he's running up the flagpole, and it is outrageous. And we're going to feel it. Within the next year or 2 years, we're going to have terror attacks, and he's not going to be able to stop them. What it really is it goes back to the Bill Clinton days before 9/11, after the 93 bombing of the World Trade Center, where Clinton treated it as a crime and said he was going to prosecute those responsible and lock them up. And it was not taken to the level of a war or intelligence or military deployment. And it led directly to 9/11. And now we're being asked to treat terrorism again as, in effect, a crime. You know, it's unfortunate that some people get murdered every day, but, you know, we don't get a state of emergency because of it. We don't do our whole system over. We don't spend billions and billions of dollars fighting crime just because a few people were killed or murdered. He really wants us to accept terrorism as a fact of life. He wants us to accept it as the norm, not to get too bent out of shape about it, and what's a few bombings more or less. Absolutely disgraceful, disgusting, and incredible. Now, it does not have to be perpetual war. There's an end to this. The United States oil production, on the one hand, and our conservation on the other hand, are increasingly putting us in the position to preempt the Arab world in oil production, to produce more oil by far than Saudi Arabia or Russia, and eventually equal almost to 2/3 of the total OPEC production within the US and Canada. And if Obama would get out of the way and approve the Keystone Pipeline and some other stuff, it would proceed faster. But by the end of the decade we're in now, the terrorists are going to be broke. There just will not be the financial basis for it. And all those lovely terrorists who get supported by our oil money are going to have to start working for a living and finding real jobs. And I believe that that will ultimately be the end of the war on terror. But in the meantime, 4 or 5 years, they can do a lot of damage. And with the president standing down and declaring the war over, we don't have our defenses up. Now, I'll be talking about this topic today on my radio show from 2 to 6. If you're in the Philadelphia area, you can get it at 12:10 a.m. WPHT. If not, go to dickmorris.com, click on it, and you can listen to it just like the radio and call in your questions. Had a call yesterday from Alaska and another from Oregon of people watching the show on the radio. Thanks.